likely you're going to go find a path that's going to get you success, and you're going to fail a few times before, and you're always going to make tweaks along the way. As the river flows and every day just trying to fill the cup, it was my wheelhouse of me being me.
I am here today with Bret Johnson on the Get Busy podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you because you are an entrepreneur, you're a branding expert, you're an author, and you know, from what I've read, like I want to talk about how you view the world, which is very different than a lot of people who come in and sit with us on this podcast. So, you know, tell me about your journey, and like you've got this whole beyond brands, beyond spirits, like, you know, so you've got businesses, you're a consultant, you've written the book Heaven Land, and I kind of want to talk about it, but let's hear about your journey as an entrepreneur.
You know, it's about finding the white space, and I think that when you go beyond the boundaries and you think kind of inside, outside, and around the box, you start finding places that you want to live in. And I've created my career out of more of a lifestyle, the things that I would enjoy doing every day. Some of my best friends feel like I cracked the code a long time ago, and I didn't work until I was retiring and then trying to do all the things when, you know, you're a little older and probably less lively.
What's the code you cracked?
Life balance.
Okay.
Just balancing what you enjoy and what you like doing every day, making it so the work doesn't feel like work. That was the unlock that I found early on, and realizing that, you know, death is an absolute, right? That's something that's going to happen.
Right.
So let's go embrace that that's the end line. It could happen any day. It could happen tomorrow, next month, 20 years, 50 years, who knows, right? But we should be comfortable with it and have a life with no regrets and live every day like it means something, and go to bed with a smile on your face. And that was something in my early 20s that I figured out.
That's amazing, because that's not something that happens that early in life, you know, because one of the sentences that you wrote that sort of moved me is you said that death, you know, shouldn't be feared, it should inspire. And it sort of seems to be a linchpin on which you have built your platforms and this code cracking that you're talking about. So, you know, like talk me through that, right? Like how to be inspired. And, you know, death, it sounds so dark and heavy and like we're getting really serious over here. But like, how do you wake up every day smiling and inspired, knowing, you know, because a lot of entrepreneurs are like their fear, their anxiety, and it's not necessarily of death, it's of failure, right? And so, you know, how do these theories and philosophies work for entrepreneurs and startups? And really, like, I just want to know about cracking this code and how you do it.
It's not like I have a recipe.
Darn.
You know,
well, you got a book, right? Like the book is here. We'll hold it up at the end.
Yeah, that's to inspire people to kind of do all those things or to make their own path. It's just like branding, right? When you go look at a brand and how that's created, you got to think of all the pieces that kind of make what the brand is, or as a founder, what makes you, because you have to love it. So no different than your life journey, you have to love it. If you don't love it, get the F out and go and make some changes and don't have regrets, and like change your life so you actually have and can have a really great life. Because I mean, I feel internally, if you're happy, other people around you could be happy. If you're not happy, then your relationship, work, home, whatever it's going to be, is probably just not going to last.
Right.
You know, it's not going to be happy. It's just, you know, you're going to kind of go through it. It's going to be ho-hum. I just realized, like I said early on, my great-grandmother passed away. We were super close. I had a girlfriend pass away. To me, that was, all right, shit, stuff's going to get real. And I'm already too young to experience that. So I was more motivated by it.
Yeah.
Kind of to unravel some of the stuff you said about the entrepreneurship. I think most of those entrepreneurs and most of the founders, and especially the younger founders I see today, are going so fast. And they are so concerned about failure, but most of the time you're going to fail.
We're human, right?
Yeah.
It happens.
Most of the time. I mean, I worked mostly in the beverage industry for 20 years. It's a 98%-ish failure rate.
Right.
I mean, most brands don't get past 5 years. Most brands don't get to $10 million in sales. It just doesn't happen. So you likely are going to go find a path that's going to get you success, and you're going to fail a few times before, and you're always going to make tweaks along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back to what you were talking about. You equated what we're talking about to building a brand, right? And a lot of people have a lot of things to say about building brands that are great and meaningful and have purpose. But how do you really do that, right? Like with startups and startup founders, a lot of times, a brand or a company is always going to take on the essence of its leader or founder, right? Like if you look at, through history. But how do you, like, out the gate as a startup, how do you create something meaningful that resonates?
It's a great question. I think it depends on the stage of the founder. I think just like as we were talking about personal stuff, like as you mature, as you make tweaks in your own brand, if each of us is a brand, and then we make tweaks along the way, I think that if you were starting something at 24, starting at something at 28,
Yeah.
at 32, 36, you're going to be a different mindset, probably a different brand, and a different purpose to all of that. You might at first want to go make a whole bunch of money. Maybe that's a 24, 28-year-old plan. It's like, let's go make money, get famous, do podcasts, do,
Right,
cool, fun
right.
things. At probably the 32, 36, as you move on, you're probably like, how do I be more sustainable? How do I do something better for the planet, the people? How do I kind of fuel the passion of all those things? And, that's a lot of what we do on the agency side is try to find those
Right.
opportunities for people to actually just shine, like do what they want to do.
Right.
Lift them up. We just need more great founders and great people talking.
And leaders,
and
like great leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, a great leader is not the same thing as a great manager, right? Like I was
Totally
reading
true.
some of your stuff on leadership. There's this thing coming out of Silicon Valley that is very heavy-handed leadership, right? And really, I think to create a brand of excellence, and we'll get back to, I'm taking the long way around here.
I got a couch. I'm good.
Yeah, no, we're good. We got nothing but time here in LA. It's one of those things that a great leader, right, and really maybe just a great human, is not someone who crushes the people around them with fear, right? Management, leadership by fear. It doesn't work. You will fail. A great leader, and I want you to weigh in, because maybe I'm just a pie in the sky, reading a little too much woo-woo in my downtime, but, a great leader lifts people up, right? When you are able to inspire the best and people around you or people that work for you, it will serve you well, not only as the leader of a company or organization, but as a human being, right? Like, what are your thoughts on leadership?
Again, I think as you get more mature, you realize that those things are important.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It definitely
But I know
didn't-
some really mature assholes,
Yes.
right? Like,
I would say in my work experience, I've worked with those,
yeah,
and the fear factor worked
yeah,
because you didn't want to fuck up,
Right.
and you really just wanted to make it work,
right,
and you knew if you did, you're out.
yeah,
And you didn't want to lose that position of whatever you had in that business or in that company or
Yeah.
in that whatever the network was that you're in. So that's happened a few times where the fear factor works.
yeah,
And you're going to do your best. There's athletes that will respond to that as well. If you tell them, hey, you suck, you're in last place, but they're in second, and then they're going to go try harder. They're going to think that, oh man, I gotta go.
That is really interesting. I mean, it makes sense too, right? Like that's that competitive, creating a competitive spirit in what you're doing. Like, can we just real fast, Brett, go back to the branding thing?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we skipped over some foundational items here. But let's just start here. What is a brand?
That's pretty nebulous, I guess, right? Because a brand could be so many different things. Like you, me, we're a brand. This podcast brand, Get Busy. You're branding something, right? And I think that as brands go, it's basically just putting a stamp, maybe even a time stamp on what you were.
Yeah.
I've had several chapters in my career, and I could say, oh, I was this back then. I was this back then. I was this then. But those are the stamps and the brand that I was at that time. So I think that that's maybe what that is. I mean, just off the cuff. It's just a timestamp of what you are at that time,
Right.
how you feel, how that, company or brand, or that, whether it's an apparel company or, I look at a lot of it as like a band. A band creates a brand,
Yeah.
right? It's a logo, it's apparel, it's music, it's a vibe, it's whatever, and it's a family. And, that might change over time and likely will.
Yeah.
So,
And I think you like with a brand, a brand is so much more than a logo, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of startups who start with a logo, right? Instead of the origin story, the narrative of what makes a brand, know what it stands for, right? That sureness of self that great brands have. How do you get there, right? Like just outside of the timestamp of where you are in the continuum of your evolution as a person or a brand, like how do you become great? Like let's just take like the weirdest story I ever did at Entrepreneur Magazine was Red Bull because the founder is strange, right? Like just a little bit strange. But how did that brand, become what it did, right? Like what it stood for, like the, X Games and the extreme adventure and all. How do you get to be that? Was it because they lived it, right? Like how do you become like a Red Bull?
yeah, it's interesting. The energy drink category and being kind of on the
Yeah.
front lines and helping pioneer what I call crack in a can.
It really is. And people it's a thing, man.
Yeah, I repented for those sins. But I think that it was the evolution of what Coke and Pepsi, were, or what
Yeah.
coffee was, and so it was, caffeinated products aren't going away.
Yeah.
So I think it was just let's re-evolutionize what caffeine is or what we do to get our pep, and then it just so happened that the X Games, hit at that time, and there was all these fringe sports and alternative sports,
Yeah.
and action sports is what we called it back then. Those were the things that were driving and fueling that caffeine addicted,
Yeah.
planet, right?
Yeah.
And especially for that demographic. So, there was a time and place, that timestamp, for the X Games to happen.
Yeah. It just met the
The
moment.
Warp Tour
Yeah.
happened, right? So it's pretty incredible that in 2025 is the 30th anniversary of X Games and Warp Tour.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Do you remember when it first happened and we were in college or whatever? It was so radical, right? Like the whole idea of it was just unbelievable. And the timing was so perfect because it was at a time when snowboarding, half pipes, like all of the extreme, like it was hitting a crescendo
Yeah.
in pop culture. So, Red Bull kind of figured out how to ride that wave. And if you're not Red Bull with the super deep pockets, like how do you find, a niche for your brand?
They didn't have deep pockets when they came here.
No, they did not.
At all. They came and tried to figure out how to get into, starting in like Southern California, Santa Cruz, Lake Tahoe.
Where else would you start, right?
Yeah. And then you had Monster and Rockstar that
Followed
followed
along. Mm-hmm.
and Americanized what was being brought over from Austria. It was, again, the time and place to do something unique and cool and fun, and hitting a demographic that could, give two shits about
Right.
most other things
Right.
and corporate dollar. So it was trying to merge in a brand and a more of a vibe and a lifestyle,
Yeah.
and they did a great job.
They did
I mean,
a great job. And it was
fantastic.
it's in all the case studies for great branding. And, they never really veered from their core purpose, right? Like it was very clear.
They were a one can brand.
Right?
That's it.
But they stood behind it and
Yep.
they believed it. They walked the walk and talked the talk. Like they did all of the things. But since we're talking about Red Bull and like Monster and that whole category that's just been so astonishing, what like has the glory days of the energy drink, are they over or are they just getting started?
I think it's all cyclical, like, a lot of brands and
Yeah.
trends are. I mean, again, caffeine doesn't really go away.
Right.
Most people need it every day.
Right.
I don't.
I'm still waiting for mine to get here, by the way.
I choose not to. I just, good sleep and,
Well, you've probably seen the studies, right? Like
hey, there are some studies that say caffeine can be good. And there's different kinds of caffeine that
Yeah.
how that affects you can actually, assimilate in the body better than
yeah,
others.
and like it does good things for your brain.
Yeah, right. There's all
in
kinds
moderation.
of good things for it. But, for Red Bull, what they did was amazing to me was they they did what Coke should have done a long time ago, which is go from a brand to media,
Yeah.
right? Because
It was the first
fantastic.
time, like where an actual company, right, like a beverage company became a media company, and the
So
media
smart.
part of that company eclipsed, right, the core competency of the business. And I still love that case study because it showed the power of community and the power of social media and the power of media when you do it properly. Right, I'm sorry. Am I doing all the talking again? I just find that case
it's
study
good.
absolutely fascinating.
I agree. Red Bull is one of those brands that, for the test of time, will show that they were innovative too. That's
And a little
again,
bit
they
fearless,
innovated
right?
that category. They brought a can that you have not seen before. It's
Right.
an 8-ounce slim, cool looking little slick can.
Yeah.
Right. And so they invaded that category. No different than GT Dave that had GT's kombucha. He brought kombucha to the world.
Yeah.
Right. Most people don't even know the brand. Of GT's, they call it Synergy, but that's just one of the lines of
And they're
products
really
that he has.
good too. I mean, they're
But most of the world won't even ever try them.
No.
Like not everybody will have a kombucha in
Yeah.
their life. So
Yeah.
it's I think it's, and maybe some people have had Red Bull, right? Because it's become a global.
I've never had one,
Really.
but I've been to the X Games, so right, like it's in Aspen, or it used to be when it still happened.
Yeah, if you like caffeine, then you might as well try it.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of scared of it. But in the beverage category, one of the things I find fascinating right now, want to get your take on this, is in the category of beer in the United States of America, the number one selling beer right now is non-alcoholic beer. It's Athletic, which I
Yep.
think is out of Michigan, maybe. I can't remember. Actually, maybe it's California.
They just bought a few breweries, so they're brewing
Yeah,
all over
and
the place.
right. So, like, how did they tap into that? I mean, it's brilliant because a lot of athletes, like, I like to drink a non-alcoholic beer after I run or skiing, right? So you keep your head about you.
Sure.
Like, that is really, really brilliant. Like, where do you see that category going?
Timing.
Yeah.
A lot of it's timing. There were already non-alcoholic beers
Yeah,
out
like
and available.
O'Doul's.
Right.
Yeah, like the
Exactly.
old school stuff.
It's no
And
different
marketing
than
and branding.
Zima was out and all,
Zima.
right? All those things were out. Those were all multiple alternatives, right?
Yeah.
Those were beyond beer. That's what people were drinking if they didn't want a beer.
Right.
They didn't want to be bloated, right? If they didn't want that, they were drinking wine coolers and Zimas and things like
yeah.
that. So just think that's what White Claw and Truly started. So it's just timing. All of a sudden you have people that are, and I think there's a lot of other factors. I think that people found that you have more access to cannabis products. You have
Right.
more access to vaping or like even psilocybin or even other things. You might be
All-
microdosing
yeah.
on something, and so you want something light or you want something no sugar. Sugar became the devil for a while. So then all of a sudden, okay, how do we have products and drinks and do things that don't have sugar in them?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of drove a little bit of that category. So I'd say,
Also, Ozempic.
yeah,
Right?
that's true
Like there's
too,
the
yeah.
whole thing in the startup community right now, like if you're in any sort of food, beverage, retail, wearables, clothing, whatever, is that in your deck you need to have a Ozempic strategy when you're raising funds. Because Ozempic is changing the way consumers consume and buy, right? They're getting smaller, can't drink alcohol, right? With Ozempic, like there's a whole category. And I just find it really weird that a drug like that is shaping deal flow,
Well, like you just asked about with the energy drinks and the cyclical part of all that, the energy drinks that are happening now are claiming to have like thermogenic properties or something that's going to help burn calories.
Really?
They're going to have like BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, that are going to help you like with recovery or something in your. So they're evolutionizing it, right? It was like I said, it was like that coffee. You got Coke, Pepsi, you got all the energy drinks. Now you have the new energy drinks that are trying to add more. There's either more caffeine or there's going to be something added to it. Right. So I don't know what the end is, but that's where it's getting. They're just getting a little bit smarter in what they're putting into those drinks.
Yeah, and just sort of listening to the collective, right? Like that trend and those vibes.
And again, going back to Red Bull, that's what they did. They were one can, right?
One can.
And then because there were so many other brands, other products, and having so many different SKUs, and flavors, that it forced them to go there, and it forced them a sugar-free. And it forced them, like, now the winter edition and having different seasonals and flavors. And so, yeah, they were forced to kind of do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go back to you for a second. Sorry, it's just such an interesting category of business when you start looking at like the
But that's
phenomenal.
part of me. I mean, that's just where I came from.
It's what you do. But when we were first started talking, you said, I retired and, immediately went to work, right? Like what does that mean? Is that how you're concentrating on like the heaven land and, the overcoming fear? Like like you're in this second act of your career. Like, talk to me about what it means to retire so you can go to work. Is that doing what you love? Like, what's the...
Yeah, I won't ever use the word retire.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I ever will.
No, and nor should we.
Yeah. So I just think that as the river flows and every day just trying to fill the cup, you just do the things that, fill that cup for you. And for me, it's working on different projects and working on things that I enjoy. So that's what I've really been doing for the most of almost 25, 30 years. So it was never, I never set out to go make a bunch of money, to just be absolutely annoyed and started getting itchy about being in an office or something like that, right? So that was never my goal. I was like, how do I go find things that I'm really going to enjoy doing and go do that? And then it turned into like, okay, which people do I want to go, or which category of business, or how do I want to influence something or motivate others and get some buy-in and get engagement? So yeah, I spread myself out and try to figure things out way back, late 20s. And then, as you kind of get in and working for brands directly, it was forcing me to be pigeonholed into something, but I still had aspirations, still had things on the side that I wanted to do and did. And so I kept kind of pushing those little marbles while I still had the regular big marble job, right?
Yeah.
And again, it was a lifestyle. I mean, like, energy drinks, that was a lifestyle brand. Working at Pabst Brewing, that was a lifestyle. I mean, got to travel all over the country taking care of sponsorships and events and things like that. So it was my wheelhouse of me being me. So it didn't feel like a job.
Right.
At all. So I keep doing that. And that's consulting now for like 10 years in beverage and events and sponsorships and things. That brings me pleasure. That I have a great day doing that all day long, juggling all those projects, working a little bit in music, writing a book and adapting it to a screenplay now. Like a lot of those things are, just satisfying.
Yeah. Tell me about the book. So, by the way, did you sign this?
No, I haven't, but
That's
I will.
lame. You got to get in the practice of signing your books.
How to get to know you so I know what to write in there for you.
Okay, so tell me about Heavenland, the book.
Yeah, Heavenland came from an idea of like having memoirs about some of the things that I've done in life. And I realized like I'm not famous enough to really write something and then people buy it just because of my name. They're not going to know. What happened was in the trigger, my best friend's dog passed away. Well, I had to put it down.
Oh.
So he couldn't, I did, right? I saw the pain that he was going through and I said, I got this. Like, it's just time. And I've known the dog since it was, I was the first one to meet it outside of, just him and his community. And then it was like, wow, what if I went up to heaven and met up with that dog? And Mitch Albom wrote a book to the 5 people you meet in heaven. And I thought about, why don't we do with the 6th person you meet in heaven? And it doesn't have to be human. It could be anything. So I decided, it could be a black lab from the South and have a great conversation and create my own heavenland and use that fictional space to go tell my story.
And you said screenplay. I heard the S word.
Right.
Talk to me about that. Like, are you self-funding or are you just writing the screenplay and shopping it?
I just started about a month ago. I have no idea. I'm born and raised in LA, but I have really not many connections with like the Hollywood world. But it's interesting. I just started using AI and using a free chat GPT to just go put it in the format.
Yeah.
Because there's already
really
dialogue
cool.
in there. So I just needed to format it.
Did you just upload the whole manuscript? And
chapter by chapter.
Chapter by chapter.
Going through it and just making sure that they're my words and customizing it. But it's putting it into the format that it needs to be in.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Your story is you're a seeker, right? Like you're someone who is seeking out and curious and always, always moving. And I'm wondering, as we kind of wrap it up here, what your advice is for I mean, I want to say entrepreneurs and startups, but you're so much more than just business, right? Like you
Yeah.
have these beliefs in a better life, like a more balanced life. And I think right now, a lot of us out there, especially entrepreneurs, could use some advice on how to find that balance, how to strike, the right moves.
Yeah, that's the camera. If you hate what you're doing,
They're all around you.
If you hate what you're doing, stop doing it. I usually coach people in some ways. Like, look, if you really don't like what you're doing,
Yeah.
start something on the side that you really, really enjoy, and see if like you start getting feedback. Just like you said earlier, brands start getting feedback, right? They start getting
Right.
like consumers start telling them things, and then that's their community. That's what they adhere to, and that's how they become loyal fans of the brand. Similarly, like as you're moving along and you're trying to do all the things in life that really have matter and meaning, people are going to attract to that too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I've walked. It was more like, let me go do things that I really enjoy,
Yeah.
that people see that I have joy and see that I'm like, things could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So let's just continue walking down that path and enjoy every day you can.
Yeah. And don't you think it's, it's hard to overstate this, but finding a purpose, right? Like finding your purpose that brings you peace and joy is one of the most rewarding things you can do for yourself, right? Whatever
sure.
that purpose is, like if it's writing a book or if it's helping brands or if it's, a fitness whatever it is, right? It's allowing yourself and giving yourself permission, right, to find that purpose, because we are boxed in by, have to go to work, have to work for the man, we need to understand and learn how to kind of push our way outside of those silos.
Well, yeah, and just being comfortable. Look, I mean, we're doing this right now to inspire other people, right? Or
Right.
educate or whatever, just a little spark or something, whatever it's going to take for them to go do the things that they want to do and
Yeah.
get busy, right? I mean, that's kind of what this is all about. So, in writing the book or doing anything, it's about elevating other people to go do the things that they really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That's really the impetus of like writing that. It was like, okay, if you have regrets, change them now. Go live life. Go enjoy everything you're doing. And if you don't, make sure that you change it. But then what would your heaven look like? Or who would you want to see? What would you tell everybody in your family when you're gone? And even thinking about those things now, and especially, at our age where, we have people that are getting older that are on their way out or have left us. We need to be prepared for that. They need to be prepared for that.
Right.
So we probably need to help them prepare for that. It's just the reality of being born and dying, right?
Yeah.
There's the dash in between the dates that we got to,
Yeah. But it's so much fun, isn't it, to get to be here,
Yeah,
right? Like
totally.
to get to go skiing, ride motorcycles, see the
Amen.
world.
Yeah.
We're really lucky.
Yeah.
So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for
Thank
coming
you.
and sitting on the purple couch and, the book, which you still need to sign.
Yes.
And I look forward to catching up with you next time I'm in LA.
Appreciate it, Amy.
Thanks, Bret.
Thank you.